Okay, so we'll begin. We're in the midst of a new series, a series about the midot, human nature, characteristics, strengths, and weaknesses. And in order for us to know how to work on them, how to correct them, how to deal with them, we have to recognize them. We have to recognize them in ourselves and in others. And then we will have a better idea of how to do battle with them. After all, a Jew's life, at least, is about refinement of character. The kiyuma mitzvot, the observance of mitzvot, were intended, amongst other things, to refine our character. It is not only to follow God's will and instruction in order that we be rewarded for the world to come. That's the bigger picture. But in essence, in performing at least certain mitzvot, we are actually helped by them. As I may have given examples in the past, for like shechita, slaughtering a cow, we don't shoot it, we don't electrocute it. The method of slaughtering the cow for those who want to have meat is in such a way that is intended to impart upon us compassion and not cruelty. And in this way, all the mitzvot that we have, there's a lot to gain from them in performing them. We've covered so far kin'ah, ta'ava, and we've covered busha. Kin'ah is envy, busha is shame, and ta'ava is desire. And I mentioned that we started with those three midot because the three of them appear at the very beginning of creation. Very destructive midot, characteristics that cause us much trouble, not only in human relationships, but also in our relationship with God. Tonight's topic will be about kavod, the pursuit of honor. That's what the word kavod means. Kavod also pretty much appears in the very beginning with the Torah Palaga, the generation that built the Tower of Babel in Babel, to make for themselves a name, self-importance. So this particular characteristic is also pretty much at the very start of creation. In order to better understand what kavod is, perhaps an English approximation of it would be a form of narcissism, if you want to be accurate, or self-aggrandizement. It's not ga'ava. Okay, don't get confused with something that appears to be similar to it called gava, which is arrogance. We'll speak about that separately next week, and that is a very, very big midah. And the reason I call it a big midah is because that is the shoresh. Arrogance happens to be a root of many other negative traits. So it's a big one. It's like the father, the parent of many other midot. Kavod is somewhat different. But it is still a big problem. It's a problematic trait because kavod is one of the trio. Kin'ah, ta'ava, ve'kavod. Those three motzim et ha'adam min ha'olam. They can actually remove one from this world and from the world to come. They can destroy his life. So even though we understood somewhat how kin'ah causes so much damage, and the same with ta'ava, with desire, for me at least, kavod was always a little bit of a puzzle. I never fully understood how kavod operates, why people have a problem with it, plus how it could really destroy a person's life. Remember, it's one of those three that can destroy a person's life, and it could remove him from the world to come. So what we're going to have to figure out, of course, and we're going to talk about it, is how does that happen? Why is it so serious? Why does it cause so much damage? Why is it one of those three that can remove one from this world? How does it do that? Ga'ava is arrogance, where a person has a superiority complex. The pursuit of kavod, redifat achara kavod, has more to do with the ego and the self-esteem. So I think you now more or less are beginning to understand what we're talking about. We're not talking about a superiority complex, ga'ava. We're talking about something of the self-image of the person. He is concerned about his self-image, about his ego. And similarly to kin'ain tava, what kavod does have in common, the redifa, the pursuit of kavod, is obviously that he feels lacking something. There is a need that he needs to fill. So what the three have in common is a feeling of lacking, of chisaron. And that feeling, that feeling of lacking, they want to fill. That is, simplistically, that is what it has in common with the other three. It's important to state at the very beginning that the word kavod is not as bad as you think. Actually, it's something very, very special, kavod, honor. What's really bad, and what we're going to be talking about mostly tonight, is the redifa achara kavod, the pursuit of honor. One wants to acquire it. If Hashem gives one kavod, that's very good. Not only is that good, there are actually blessings. If you see a Jewish king, you make a blessing. Blessed be Hashem, who has given from his kavod to those who fear him. Lireav. Shechalak mikvodo lireav. And if you see a non-Jewish king, and there are not too many of those today, I don't include the President of the United States as a king, even though he'd like to be one. Right? It's shechalak mikvodo lebasar vadam. Hashem has given from his kavod to a human being. Or another nusach, I think, says lebriyotav, to those he created. So we see from the blessings that this is something that we do consider special if we make a blessing for it. So if an individual has kavod, he's in a position of honor, that's not bad. It's a gift from Shamayim. We're saying a blessing for that. Hashem has given from his kavod to a human being. So we have to keep in mind what's negative about this midah is the pursuit. When one actually makes an effort to want to get it, to want to get that position for the kavod it gives him, for the honor it will give him. And I've noticed it over time that there are some people who really crave this more than others. We all have a little bit of that, and we call that self-esteem. There's nothing wrong with that. As we will elaborate more next week, it's actually healthy for one to have a little bit of a self-esteem, kavod atzmi, that he thinks somewhat of himself. Oy vavoy, if he does not, he commit suicide, chas v'shalom, if he doesn't think highly of himself, that he's special in some way. So to a certain degree, kavod of oneself is healthy, is necessary. But where it begins to be a problem is when it's exaggerated, where people are actually dying for it. They want to have that respect and kavod. They want to be first. And you see it all over the place, unfortunately, amongst all kinds of people. From the greatest chachamim to the lowest, some people have this weakness that they want to have this kavod. Rabbis tell us that this kavod, if it's not coming to you and you pursue it, it's going to run away from you. Kol harodef achar hakavod, kavod borachat mimeno. Hagdula borachat mimeno. This position will run away from you. You won't get it. If it's not coming to you, then you won't get it. In other words, we see from many of the sayings that the rabbis tell us that it does not pay. It is not a good idea. If it's coming to you, it will come to you. But don't actively pursue it. It's not a good midah. So therefore, if somebody did receive it, if somebody was appointed as a rabbi, as a judge, as a king, there's nothing wrong with it. It's only for those who pursue it, who actively want it for themselves. But if it is given to them from Hashem, if people want this individual to be their rabbi or their judge, there's nothing wrong with it. Now this is a very important distinction because many have had this question. They learn Pirkei Avot or they learn the Gemarot that talk about stay away from being a rabbi. Harabanut koveret et ba'alea. One Gemara says the rabbinate buries those who have held its position. The rabbinate Rabbanut koveret et be'alea. It buries. In other words, it destroys you. It hurts you. It's not such a great position to have, to behold. Stay away from it. But who's going to be the rabbi then? Who's going to be the judge? Who's going to be the man of authority? If having a position of authority is so harmful that it buries you, and therefore they discourage you, why should there be rabbis? I mean, we need rabbis, don't we? So the Maharsha explains as follows. There's a Gemara that says there are various things that people do that shorten their lifespan. One of those things is the Gdula, position of authority. Shorten a person's lifespan. And they bring proof from Yosef, who lived less years, a shorter life than his brothers because he was the king. So again, we have here various examples, Gemarot, that appear to be discouraging good people from wanting to have a position of a king or of a rabbi, of a judge. What's wrong? So the Maharsha explains that what the rabbis are telling, what the rabbis meant in the Gemara, is mi she ose atzmo. In other words, whoever makes himself, who pursues himself, manhig atzmo berabbanut. It does not say mi she hu rav, whoever is a rabbi, whoever is a king. Mi she manhig atzmo berabbanut. Whoever conducts himself as a rabbi. Conducting yourself means that you're abusing your position of authority. You're conducting yourself in an abusive way towards others. You're taking advantage of the position. You're not doing it l'shem shamayim. You're not doing it to serve the people. That's not what you have in mind. So a person who conducts himself like a big shot, that's where he will suffer the consequences of doing so. Not if he just received the position and he means well. That's not what he meant. It says manhig atzmo. Rashi also explains on the other Gemara that one has to turn away, run away from srara, from anything that has to do with positions of authority. So Rashi explains it was only meant for those shemitnaseim. In other words, those people who reach that position of authority and become proud of themselves, and therefore conduct themselves in such a way where they abuse others. Same idea. It was not intended to say that those who have received this position, it's going to harm them, it's going to do them some harm. No, not necessarily. On the contrary, the rabbis tell us, if there's nobody else to do the job, then you do it if you're qualified. Nothing wrong, as long as you're motivated to do it for the right reasons. It would be the wrong reasons if you're doing it because you want to be an authority. You want the job because of the respect that it's going to bring you, the money that it's going to bring you, the honors and all that. That's not good. But if you're motivated to do it for the right things, you want to help people, you want that job, you want that position of authority, because only then could you have a say in matters in the community, then that's fine. The people who have the greatest difficulty in this particular midah are those who especially have already acquired this position, much more so than those who don't have it yet. The best way to see this in real life is politicians. Ask almost any politician, do you want to quit your job after it's over, or would you want to rerun again for a second or third term? Most of them want to run for a second or third term, especially if you can hand them the position for free. They're an incumbent. It's going to be easy to win. Very few people say, well, I got better things to do with my life. Once an individual is in a position of honor, of authority, he has a harder time letting go. Once a person has reached to the top, he becomes much more abusive of those who are beneath him. That's just the facts of life. Even though he made promises before he was elected, he was going to do this and that, he doesn't always keep his promises. He's got another agenda, and that's himself. He wants to keep his position. He wants to keep his chair. He wants to be re-elected. Then he may not necessarily do the right thing because his agenda is to be re-elected. Once an individual has that position of kavod already, of authority, it's very difficult for him to give it up. He may not have been an arrogant man. He may not have pursued honors before. He may have been even a simple man, simple gentleman. Once you've given him, you've sat him down, made him the president, the prime minister, or some other minister, he feels important. And great rabbis have said this about themselves too. They never wanted the position to begin with. They ran away from it. But once you put him in that spot, they would express themselves. One of them did. I would pour hot water on somebody that would want to take my job away from me. That's how one big rabbi said in the Gemara, I would pour hot boiling water on somebody's head if he would dare take me away. In the very beginning, he didn't want it. And now what happened to him? That's what the position does to people. It changes them completely. And it doesn't do it in a positive way, obviously. It has a negative effect on them. All because of the power, because of the authority that they have. So one of the reasons why, therefore, this is looked down at is not for what it represents. You can accomplish a lot with that position, but it's the pursuit of this, of wanting this. Once you do get it, you may abuse it. And remember, Bashamayim, when a person is in power and has more authority, they're more makpid with him. Yoter medaikim, yoter medagdekim. They're much more scrutinizing his actions. You have so much authority, that means you're responsible for so many people. They would listen to you. When you were an average citizen, you were not as important. You do not carry the same responsibilities. But now that you're on the top, you're the chief, you're the boss, then you're responsible for everybody else too. You could have made a difference. So as you can see, that position of honor, that position of authority can be dangerous too for the individual if he does not do a good job. So that can help us understand why the rabbis have said that these positions in the rabbinate, positions of authority, in the end, mekaberet et ba'aleha. It will bury those who are in that position. Bury them in it will give them a difficult time because it's very challenging. Very, very challenging to make sure you do the right thing and that you don't have any personal agenda here. But you're doing it really for the sake of Hashem and for the people. So what do we see so far? That true kavod, good kavod, is something that one earns, not something that you should pursue and want for yourself. You have to work for it. If one's conduct is good, then people will praise him, people will like him, people will look up to him. You will earn it, and it will be coming to you. As the rabbis tell us in their words, it's not the place that gives kavod to the individual, it's not the position that honors the man. He is the one that gives honor to the position. He is the one that gives honor to that place. Not the place itself, not the position. You have a lot of people in the Senate, in Congress, that when they wear a nice suit with a nice tie, and they're clean shaven, and their hair is combed nicely, they look important. Do you know that some of these people are rotten? You would never know if you looked at the outer appearance of them. Just put on a suit and a nice tie, and comb your hair and shave, and look clean, right? And maybe add a pair of glasses, so you look like a professor from somewhere. This guy could be a homeless guy from where here, downtown. They just dressed him up and they made him look like that. You have people like that who are big politicians, who look important, but they're not important at all. The position does not give kavod to the person, the rabbis tell us. By the goyim, it appears, he's a senator. Do you know how many times he cheated on his wife? He's a rotten fellow. I mean, he doesn't do any good. He's after money and other things. I mean, there are a lot of good senators too, but there are some that not. How many are getting caught? How about priests? But he has this nice robe on him. And maybe even a yarmulke. Some of them, right? The priests. So what? He's rotten, corrupt. The position therefore does not give kavod to the individual. The individual gives kavod to his position. If the man conducts himself properly, does everything right, he is giving respect and honor to what he's doing, to the position that he's in, not the other way around. And those who have pursued honor, nevertheless, who've tried their best to get the position, the rabbis tell us it's always going to run away from them. They're never going to get it. Therefore, the rabbis tell us the best way to conduct yourself is when it comes to learning, don't learn with kavod in mind, that you want to be honored, respected as a rabbi, as an important person. You're learning limod me'ahava, v'sof hakavod lavo. Learn out of love, because it's the right thing to do, it's a mitzvah, and in the end, the kavod will come anyway. Hashem will bless you, Hashem will give you the kavod. People will look up to you. Don't do it, don't be motivated to do it because of that, because it's going to run away from you. Learn for the right reason, learn out of love, and then the kavod will come. The rabbis also tell us, Ezu mechubad, ha-mechabed et habriot. Who's really a respectable man, an honorable man that deserves to be honored? He who honors others, he who respects others. He deserves to be respected. In other words, one who gives kavod to others, who's respectful and sensitive to others, in the end, people will respect him too. So if anything, that's the way to get kavod. First give it to others. Be considerate of others. Give kavod to others. And then those same people will give you kavod too. Rabbis also tell us that the running away from the kavod is also an important requirement if you want to acquire Torah. If one wants to acquire the learning of the Torah and to understand it well and to absorb it, to make it a part of his life, for the Torah to have really influence in molding him, for the Torah to be his true guide, one of the midot Torah niknet bahem is one who stays away from kavod. The reason for that is because if that's on somebody's mind that he wants to be respected and he wants to have all that kavod, it will interfere with his true kavanot, with his true intentions of learning this for the sake of Hashem, learning this because it's a mitzvah. Therefore, it will not be pure. If you want the Torah to be pure, to have the greatest impact in your life, then you have to be motivated to learn it for the real reasons. You have a lot of non-Jews who have learned Gemara. You think it has done anything to them? Perhaps they admire Judaism a little bit more than other anti-Semites. Maybe. That's what they got. But have they become more God-fearing as a result? No. The only way a Jew can become truly God-fearing and where the Torah can have an impact on him is that he learns obviously the whole Chumash, Gemarot, Midrashim, Zohar, and he does so for the real reasons. Now, he could have a simple reason. A simple reason, he's curious, he wants to learn about his roots. That's okay to start with. The rabbis tell us it's okay to start with a simple reason, but don't start with the wrong reasons. Then you won't get anywhere. It won't do any good to you. It'll just be like a fairy tale, just like a storybook. If one actually goes through the Torah, it's a guarantee. Take any reform, any conservative rabbi, and if he sits down with patience and he's sincere about becoming acquainted with Torah from A to Z on his level, I guarantee you, I assure you that he's going to come out God-fearing person and he's going to become a Bar Teshuvah. The Torah has so much light, the Kabbalah says, that if one just learned Torah for the real reasons, the light of the Torah will bring him back to his senses. But he has to go through Gemara, Chumash. But imagine him reading a Rashi, which was written 1,000 years ago. I don't like his interpretation. I have a better interpretation. Who are you, 1,000 years later, to compare yourself with Rashi? You see, if the attitude is wrong, then it's not gonna help him. If he has respect for previous commentaries, if he understands that they are the ones who are carrying the tradition, the torch of the tradition from generation to generation, if he has respect for the past, then he's going to look up to the Torah. When you look up to the Torah, that Torah, when you learn it, is going to make an impact. It's going to have an impact on you. But if you look down at it, big deal. Yeah. Yeah.
The incident of Korah is motivated by Kinah or by
Well, you tell me. Well, how was Korach, or what exactly motivated him? What was it?
Was he envious of Moshe and Aaron, or with Kinah, or did he want the covenant position?
What do you think?
Maybe both.
Exactly. It was both. Sometimes, or actually many times, it is both, or more than one thing that's motivating a person, right? He felt important. He felt left out. He was obviously envious of the others too. But on the other hand, it is possible for somebody not to be envious, just to want it for himself. When would that happen? When there's nobody else in that position to begin with. There you had Moshe and Aaron all having positions and him nothing, right? And of course he liked the fact that this is a good position. So it was both, and perhaps even other ideas, other midot as well, that led to this. And as you can see from that particular example, it led to machloket and all kinds of problems. And this is what we have today too. Do you know how many, unfortunately, groups, and I won't mention names, amongst the Jewish people, let's just call them groups, there's infighting, between the various groups. Who should be the next leader? Who should be the next rabbi? We want him. No, we want him. We want him. And there's a lot of fight going on. And what's the fight all about? What's the big deal? It's covered and money too. Because whoever gets the position has control of a lot of money, a lot of funds, and all kinds of institutions, problems. It's all over the place. It always was. And unfortunately, people don't learn the lessons. That this leads to machloket. You don't gain anything from it. It's so silly. It's so bad and damaging. So those who give kavod to others, in the end, the kavod will come to them. Those who respect others will be respected. But those who use that position of kavod to abuse others, they're not going to get anything from it. The immediate damage of one who has this weakness of wanting kavod for himself is best seen in the tragic incident of the students of Rabbi Akiva. For those of you who don't remember, during the Omer, right, after Pesach, when we have those days of mourning for the students of Rabbi Akiva, 24,000 of them died. What's the reason why they died? So the rabbis tell us, Al shelo kibdu zeh et zeh. They did not respect each other. Each one was in for himself. Each one was more concerned about his own progress, about his own Torah. He did not make an effort to help or to be concerned or interested in the welfare of his fellow Jew. Students, Talmidei Chachamim, just like himself, they didn't really have that much achdut, unity amongst themselves. This was lacking ever since the destruction of the Second Temple. This is what bred sinat chinam, baseless hatred. What's baseless hatred? When you don't care about somebody else as much as you care about yourself. So you don't hate him, but that's what's called baseless. It's not a real hate. You don't hate him for some specific reason. He didn't do anything to you. But because you don't care about him, it's like you hate him. If you cared about him, and you obviously, you wouldn't hate him. And there's no reason why another Jew should not care for another Jew. That's what the Torah is all about. So many mitzvot of looking out for another Jew, helping him or her in their time of need. Now you ask yourself, wait a minute, the Talmidim, the students of Rabbi Akiva, didn't have respect for each other. These are great rabbis in their own right. Talmidei Chachamim, this is a great generation, so much Torah. Where's the respect? You know why a person does not respect someone else? It's very simple. He's more interested in himself. It's very simple. When a person is more interested in himself, kavod atzmi, then there's no room for someone else. When somebody loves himself so much, there's no room in him to love someone else. It's very simple. As the rabbis tell us in the Kabbalah, if one had true fear of God, he would fear no one in this world. He would fear no animal, no other human being. Because if you have the fear of God in you completely, there's no room for other fears. But if you have fear for everything else, you may not have room for fear for God. There's only room for one. So if they have an interest in themselves, if the interest in themselves is so strong, there's no room to be interested in someone. I don't have the time for him. People don't want to make time for others because they're so interested in their own life. They couldn't care less about others. And that is what led to sinat chinam all along. That is what led to machloket. That is what led to all these problems. So this is an immediate damage that's done to the chevra meaning to the environment, to society, when people are more into themselves, they care more about their own kavod, then there is no room for having that kavod for others. So what do we see from that? What would be the opposite then? What lesson can we learn from that? That the greatest quality that can strengthen friendship and marriage, of all the ingredients that exist for a good relationship between husband and wife, a good relationship between two friends, the most important one perhaps is what? Kavod. Respect him or her. If one respects another, then he has the main ingredient for forming a healthy relationship. People do not get divorced if they still respect each other, not so quickly. They still do sometimes for other reasons, but it's usually they've lost respect. There's not enough respect. And the rabbis therefore tell us, be careful. Hizaru bichvod haisha. Since Baruch Hashem we have more men today than women, so I'm going to remind you, the men, and even if you're single, remember when you get married, have a lot of kavod for your wife. And the rabbis tell this to us for various reasons. If you want a good parnasa, don't ever dare bring your wife to tears. Because if she cries, and she'll do that many times, by the way, right? But don't be you the one to blame for it, because that can ruin your parnasa. That can ruin one's livelihood. He can lose his job, because that brings an accusation against him. The wife is the source of blessings in the home, according to our tradition. She brings blessing to the house. Some men don't appreciate that. So therefore, be careful to give kavod, rabbis tell us, to your wife, to your spouses, in order that you should always be wealthy. This does not excuse the women, of course. The women need to respect their husbands too. You know why? Because the men have a problem with an ego. If they don't have a little bit of respect, they're very, very pained. So compliment them, be nice to them. That will help the marriage very much as well. So you have here an important ingredient that can help any relationship, marriage or friendship. It's called kavod. Okay, what has this kavod or lack of kavod, what has this done throughout the history of our people? If you look back in our history, read the history books, you will find that a lot of people's lives was destroyed because of this. We started off saying how this really does tremendous amount of damage to one's own personal life. We saw an example of how this does damage to society with the students of Rebbe Kiva. Many people, great people, have lost everything because of the pursuit of kavod. And one of the most famous ones was Yerovam ben Nevat, one of the kings in Israel, of the kingdom of Israel, who because of that pursuit, because of that interest that he had, because he wanted to be first, wanted to be the most important one. And of course, we're not in a position to judge him. We don't really understand what happened to him, but we are only going by what the rabbis tell us, that what brought him down, what caused this failure, what made him lose everything, was the pursuit of kavod. There's an incredible story in the Gemara about a Kohen whose punishment min hashamayim, and I say punishment from heaven because everything is from heaven, right? Came about as a result of kavod. Let me share with you the story. There was once a Kohen Gadol, a high priest, who was asked to intervene in an argument between the king and his wife, the princess. What was the argument between the king and the princess? The king said, I think goat meat is tastier than mutton, sheep, lamb. Goat meat, in his opinion, is tastier than lamb. And the queen said, what do you know about cooking and food? Lamb chops, is tastier than goat meat. Now, I've asked many people about goat meat, and I don't think most of you have had goat meat, but for those who've had, I've asked them, and they agree that the sheep is tastier. The lamb is tastier. All right, but anyway, they had this argument. Who's gonna decide who's right? They asked the Kohen Gadol, who knows a lot about meat, because that's what he does all day, bring sacrifices to make the determination. So they brought him over, and this is what he did. He says, "What's the question?" He raised his hand. "What's the question? Of course, lamb meat is tastier." The king was upset because he made like this. In a way, he basically made fun of the king. What's the question? Don't you know? Lamb meat is better than goat meat. The king got so upset. "Since you were disrespectful of me, your hand will be chopped off." So, even though he moved his right hand, and his right hand was supposed to be chopped off, he bribed the one who was in charge of chopping off his hand. He bribed him to remove his left hand, because the right hand, obviously, you could use it in the future. He bribed him, "Please remove my left hand and not my right hand." Right? And when the king found out about this, he had his other hand also chopped off. So he lost both hands. And now you wonder, wait a minute, everything happens min hashamayim, right? What was going on? Kohen Gadol to lose his two hands, and what did he do already? Just do that like this, what's the big deal? Lamb meat is tastier than goat meat. So the rabbis tell us, min hashamayim, it came to him, this punishment, because he wanted to show how much kavod he had for himself, for his position, that he used gloves when he handled the sacrifices. He didn't want to get his hands dirty with the blood. In other words, because of the kavod of himself, because he wanted to, show how important he is, how he felt important about himself, because of that kavod, Me'ashamayim, they punished him. The korbanot is not that important to you, that you have to cover your hands, you don't want to get a little bit dirty. You know what korbanot sacrifices are? This is the work, this is the work of the Bet HaMikdash. Nobody ever did something like that. But this guy, because of the kavod, because of the pursuit of honor, because of his own self-image, kavod atzmi, that's how he conducted himself. Hashem says, well, you're going to get it one day. And that's how he got it, by moving his hand in such a disrespectful way, a lack of kavod, where in fact it was a lack of kavod for Hashem. One of my favorite, however, examples of kavod, of what a kavod can do to a person, is Haman HaRasha. For those of you who remember in the Megillah, what made Haman upset the most? Of everything, he's upset. He's upset at the Jews, right? But what made him the most upset? Right. Here's a guy who's second to the king, who has a large family, who has money, high position, honors. Kol ze enono shove li, he says. He makes a comment. All this is worthless to me, as long as this one Jew over there doesn't bow down to me. Could you imagine? One guy, one Jew. One Jew, Yeah, the Jews have always given people trouble, right? All kinds of goyim have always had complaints, but this guy's got everything. What does he want? It's one thing if they were jealous of us. Jews were advisors to the king. Okay, that was jealousy. They didn't want to convert. They're stubborn. They always blamed us for everything. We're the capitalists, then we're the communists. Everything. We're always blamed for something. But here's one Jew who's giving this guy a problem. Imagine, because of this one Jew and because of his problem with kavod, he lost everything. He was hanged. An example of an individual who lost everything because of kavod, the pursuit of kavod. So this has happened throughout history. Many people have gotten themselves into trouble. And I personally, myself, I've always had a hard time trying to understand the psychology of these people. What's the big deal? And we're going to get into that right now. We're going to get into a little bit of the psychology to try to figure out what's going on in these people's mind. Why can't they just give up? What's the big deal? What do you need it for? So now that we understand what this midah is approximately, what it does, the damage that it causes, how many people have lost everything because of it, how one needs to be careful with it, let's try to figure out what we can do about it. And in order to know what to do about it, we have to delve a little bit deeper as to the psychology behind this. just want to remind you that this is one of those midot, Redifat Achar Kavod, that requires a lot of work. Whoever has this weakness, it's not just working on this midah. There are certain midot, all you got to do is work on that midah. This midah, whoever has a problem with this, has to work on various other midot as well. This one requires a lot of work. Whoever has this problem, it's a problem. So therefore the rabbis tell us, since it's such a big problem, it's easier to avoid than run away or stay away from kavod than once you're in a position of authority. Because once you're in a position of authority, once you're already into the kavod, it's much more difficult to give it up. So before you get there, stay away and don't strive to get there. Don't have aspirations for these things. That is easier. It's easier to stay away than once you are in a position to come down from it. Look at the guy of Honduras. He's dying to be reinstated. You know, they threw him out. I don't know if you've been following the news. He's just dying. He just wants to be, even though all he's got is a couple months left, he just has to be reinstated because he can't face it. You know, that what he did was a terrible mistake. It's a tremendous shame for him. They obviously humiliated him. I'm talking about the ex-president of Honduras, who's hiding right now in the Brazilian embassy there. And most of you apparently are not too involved or care to follow Latin American news, but it was in the news several months ago. It's a delicate topic because Americans don't want to have coups, like they did in the past in dictatorships in Latin America. So it's a political sensitive topic. But if you look deeper into this, it's not just about politics, it's about pride, and it's about kavod and shame, all the midot that we've been talking about. So therefore the rabbis tell us you're better off staying away from it, because once you're in there, you can't come down so easily. You enjoy it, you like it. So what's the psychological issue here? The best description of what goes on in this individual who pursues kavod I found in the Sefer Michtav Miliyahu, a very good book, several volumes about musar, ethics, morals, values. And he says like this: look at a child. A child may want to build a castle out of a toy that he has, out of Lego, whatever. If you come over to him and destroy his castle, he'll be so upset. To him, this castle is important, even though we know that this castle is really nothing. It's made of nothing. It's a toy. But to him, because of his imagination of what this represents to him, what this means to him, this is everything to him. It's important to him. So he'd be very, very upset. So the Michtav Miliyahu goes on to explain, adults have usually parted with their toys. They usually have no interest in the toys that they were interested in when they were younger. But there's something else that is very important to them that they aspire to even in their older age, and that's called kavod. An adult has a certain attachment or a certain interest in kavod because for some reason that kavod makes him feel good if he gets it and makes him feel miserable if he doesn't get it. In the same way that a child has this imagination about this toy, this thing that he's made to himself, and if you break it or take it away from him, it hurts him, it pains him. An adult has something else that matters to him a lot, that gives him satisfaction, and if you take it away, makes him miserable. And that's called kavod. Now, what's the truth behind all this? The reality really is that it doesn't make sense. Why doesn't it make sense? Because if you really have a talent, if you really, really have something good about you, then what difference does it make if they don't recognize it? You know you have it. You have that talent. You have something to be happy and proud about. So what difference does it make to you what they think about it? Now, if you don't have it, then what difference does it make to you that they are actually misguided to believe that you do have it, that they're making a mistake if you don't? In other words, if you have it, then be happy. What difference does it make the other individual's opinion of it, that he gives you kavod? If you don't have it, In other words, and they're making a mistake in assuming that you do, why should you care one way or another? So he comes to the conclusion that it's all in the imagination. It's meaningless. Because if the real kavod is the ma'alat, a particular talent or a particular knowledge of something that you have, that you're happy that you have, that in itself should make you happy. The individual's opinion of that shouldn't really make a difference. That should not in any way make a difference, because you know what you have, you know of yourself. And if you don't have it, that means they're making a mistake in judging you the wrong way. For sure shouldn't make any difference. You see, so it's all, he explains, it's all imaginative. It's all, it's all in the koach of the dimayon, of the imagination, just like a child who thinks that this is such a big deal. It's not a big deal. All of this is a toy made out of Lego. It's nothing. There's nothing. There's no reason to take it so seriously. Those who have it more difficult, however, it's not just in the imagination. There are some people who don't think highly of themselves, who have a low self-esteem, and we may touch a little bit about this more next week, when we talk about Gava next week. Those who have a low self-esteem, they need this more than others. So when you see an individual who has a big problem with kavod, that he wants this, it could also be because he really, really needs it. He really doesn't think highly of himself. He really has a self-esteem problem, and therefore he's craving for that. But you know who's the worst of all? There's a third fellow. The third fellow, he's so crazy about kavod that he buys it with money. He pays people, he does things with his money, and he doesn't realize, in the beginning he doesn't, later on he does, that when people give him kavod, they're not giving kavod to him, they're giving kavod because of his money. And you meet these people all the time. They like this man, not because of who he is, they like him for his money. And he loves all the attention, but is he getting the attention because of who he is? No, he's getting the attention because of his money. And eventually he figures this out and he doesn't mind. That's what's funny about it. He doesn't mind. He knows that the guys are flattering me, smiling at me, and he knows it's not true. They don't really like him. They couldn't care less about him. They do it for his money. He knows it, and he still goes for it. It's a sickness. That's already a sickness. So there's various degrees or levels of kavod. This is the worst one of all. It's, as we said in the very beginning, there's a certain need out there. Okay, so now we've come to the point of how do we go about helping these people who have this problem of kavod. What should they do? Number one, in order for anyone to begin to do any kind of work on this midah, or any other midah, he has to know himself. I'm not saying that he should go see a psychiatrist or psychologist, to tell me about myself. No, not necessarily. If a person learns Sifrei Musar, if he learns Torah, the Torah will speak to him. The Torah will point out his mistakes and his weaknesses. It's like a mirror. Usually that helps. A person has to get to know himself. Once you get to know yourself, you will notice something very interesting. There's good things and negative things, strengths and weaknesses. And everybody's the same. All human beings have strengths and weaknesses, because if you had no weaknesses, then you're an angel, then you don't belong down here, you belong upstairs. So there are no real angels down here. We all have some weaknesses. And since you will notice that you have strengths and you have weaknesses, that may humble you a little bit. Well, I'm not so perfect after all. Then, after you notice your strengths, you'll come to the realization that, well, everybody has a particular mission. Everybody is unique and special in some way. I don't have to be like him, and he's not going to be like me. We're all different. Each one is here to accomplish something else. So I don't have to get to where he is, which is really a little bit of part of the lecture about kin'ah. No reason to be jealous or envious about somebody else, because that wasn't intended to me. This is what's intended for me. I've been given a different talent, a different strength, and therefore I don't have to pursue that particular position. I have to be content with what I have. So when one analyzes himself, sees who he is, compares himself to others, he says, wait a minute, I don't need that. I am who I am, and he is who he is. He will never be me, and I will never be him. Now, when one analyzes this, this helps him with his self-worth. We mentioned a little bit about low self-esteem. When a person realizes, well, wait a minute, I have some strengths too, that means I have some self-worth, which is helpful. It's a healthy way of thinking, wait a minute, I'm not just a nothing, there's something good out here. And sometimes, of course, this has to be pointed out by someone else. Imagine a husband telling a wife, you're a nothing. How is she going to feel? Well, she may feel all right because she knows she's worth something. But what if she feels nothing about herself and comes along this man and says that too? Completely destroys them. The friend or the individual or the spouse. It's terrible. That person may be really weak. It doesn't help for you to tell him that. On the contrary, we do everything to bring up someone, to bring him out of the situation, to strengthen him. If you married someone, well, guess what? You married them because you can be the best help to them. But she's like this. Well, guess why you married her? Because she's like this, you're the one that's marrying her. No, I can't deal with it. No, if you married her, Hashem put you together, it's because you are the best equipped to help her. And you, the woman, are the best equipped to help him. If it's a true zivug min hashamayim, if Hashem, of course, blesses the union and they are meant for each other, which is usually the case, then that's the way they should look at it. But people don't want to deal with issues. They want everything so perfect, and there is no perfect. Another way that a person can help himself is say to himself, wait a minute, why should I go after this kavod? I'm not complete. There's so much for me to accomplish. As the rabbis tell us, a Jew should always aspire, when will my deeds ever come close to the deeds of my forefathers? They were so much better. They were so special. When will I be like them? When will I be close to being like them? I'm so far behind. I have so much more to accomplish. All of this humbles him. No longer gives him the drive to go after the kavod. And why should, I have so much more to accomplish. How can I even think of this kavod? David HaMelech says, very famous pasuk, V'chatati lenegdi tamid. My sin is always before me. Anybody who's doing teshuvah should not think, okay, I've done teshuvah, it's over. He has to remember that sin could always come back. And number two, perhaps his teshuvah was never complete, and he still has to do more work to remove the stain of the sin. So David HaMelech is saying to us, in Tehillim, V'chatati lenegdi tamid, I always see it before me. I'm always concerned about it, that it shouldn't come back, that it shouldn't make me fall, that they shouldn't accuse me for it. Everyone knows himself to some degree. At least he or she knows the mistakes of the past. If you think about the mistakes of the past, you're going to say to yourself, well, how could I be so happy and proud when I still have all that record from the past? I still have all that to repair. This, again, is helpful to humble. This way of thinking is helpful with various midot, with humbleness, with gava, but also with kavod. How can I think of going after this kavod when I know deep down myself I don't deserve it? I have this record of all kinds of mistakes that I made in the past. Another idea that can help one is atzne alechet im elokecha. The Navi says that a Jew should always conduct himself in a modest way. When we spoke about modesty, I mentioned this pasuk. Modesty is not only in the dress code, modesty is in speech, modesty is in conduct. How do you have modesty in conduct? When you don't show off. A lot of people do mitzvot in public because they're going to be observed by others. Well, the big trick is, how are you in private quarters? In your private quarters, are you a Yerei Shamayim? Lo'olam yeh adam Yerei Shamayim baseter. The trick is to be God-fearing in your private quarters when nobody sees you. Are you still careful there with mitzvot and averot? Because some people are very good in the outside, in public, in shul. You see them praying Amidah Shmoneh Esrei for 45 minutes, they're shaking. At home, they do all sorts of terrible things. The trick is, how is one in his private quarters when nobody sees him? Is he still God-fearing or not? How does he conduct himself there? A lot of people are very nice and kind with others, but in their own home with their spouses, they're not. They use abusive language. They maybe even be physical. They don't conduct themselves in the same way they conduct themselves in the house because people see them. They want to have an impression. They want to have people look at them in a certain way. So the trick is, if a Jew is careful in his private quarters to be observant, to show that he's God-fearing, this will also help him avoid this problem called redifa achar hakavod, pursuit of honor. Why? Because in pursuing yirat shamayim to the extreme, that even in his private quarters he's very, very careful, this will matter so much more to him than what people say. It's a counter balance towards this pursuit of honor. It pulls him in the right direction, that he wants to find favor in the eyes of God, not in the eyes of men. God's relation with him is more important. What he thinks of him is more important than what they think and they say. Who cares about how they deal with him and how they look up to him or not? So by being more careful in your private quarters and how you conduct yourself can help with this particular weakness as well. I think personally that one of the greatest perhaps tools that can help one who has this weakness is to be extremely careful to do everything lichvot shamayim. Lichvot shamayim means everything for the honor of Hashem. We're talking about honor, kavod. And if one commits himself, wait a minute, everything I will do and I take upon myself to do is to give honor to Hashem, it will help him. How will this help him? There is a very beautiful and powerful ritual, let's call it a ritual, that's called Tikkun Chatzot. Tikkun Chatzot is something that is very much discussed in the Kabbalah and the Chassidut, where Jews get up in the middle of the night, around midnight, and they mourn for the destruction of the temple. And they're mourning at the same time that the Shekhinah is mourning. So it's a very powerful moment. I mean, we mourn Tisha B'Av, we can mourn in the middle of the day. We say many things in the prayer about coming back to Yerushalayim, but that is a special moment of the night. For Kabbalistic reasons, it's very, very powerful. And whoever says those prayers at that time, it's a tremendous high level. Whoever does it regularly, it's very powerful stuff. Very few people do this. But what does it show when one does it? It shows that he has a tremendous kavod for Shamayim. He has a tremendous sensitivity to the Churban, sensitivity to the fact that the Jews are still in the diaspora, and that you know that there were great tzaddikim, and I knew two of them, who after they were done with Tikkun Chatzot, if you went into that room where they sat, you found a puddle of water. And that puddle of water was from tears that they shed for the Churban Bet HaMikdash. A puddle of water. Not from glass, not from water, tears. They were so serious about it. That mattered to them the most. Kavod Shamayim, Galut HaShechina, that we are so many years in the diaspora. That meant so much that they cried. Somebody like that is not going to pursue kavod for himself. It's the opposite. It's impossible. If a person therefore gets used to this kind of conduct, that he wants to, more than anything else, do things for kavod of Hashem, kavod Shamayim, he's not going to care about his kavod. After all, the rabbis tell us everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created in the world is for his kavod. Lichvodo, Hashem bara kol lichvodo, for his honor. Everything is for him. Even though it's for our use, but in the end it's for his kavod. So if we think about this, we're going to say to ourselves, wait a minute, what am I bothering going after this? If it's coming to me, it's going to come to me anyway. If it's not coming to me, then why should I go after it? It's ridiculous. Why make my life miserable trying to get something that's not coming to me? Everything is for Hashem anyway. Anybody who follows these instructions, in other words, that he does not pursue the kavod of himself, but the kavod of Hashem, this will also help him do things Hashem Shamayim, for the sake of heaven. Because mitzvot and the learning of Torah can be done for the sake of heaven, it can be done not for the sake of heaven, just as a routine, or for a reward, or for some other compensation. The real way to do a mitzvah is for Hashem, lishma. It's called lishma for its real sake. How do you ever get that? You have to work on yourself, not to think of yourself, but to think of Hashem first. That takes a tremendous amount of discipline and work. It does not happen overnight. But over time, if one trains himself, wait a minute, I'm here for that. This is my mission anyway. Money is not a goal, but a means. The real goal is to do the will of Hashem. If one begins to train himself like that, and step by step follows through, he eventually will not only think like that, but do and behave like that. The biggest challenge, however, will be for someone who's really, really smart, for somebody who's really wealthy, millions of dollars, and for somebody who's in a very high position. As I said before, the ones who are already in the position, it's hard for them to control themselves. Those who are not there, they want it, but they can convince themselves, hopefully, that this is not the right way to think. But what does somebody do who has millions of dollars? What does somebody do who's the smartest of all? Who won the Nobel Prize of something? Or one who's in a great high position, he was just elected president of some country. What does he do? How is he supposed to think? So the rabbis tell us the best thing for these individuals who are already on the top is to say, wait a minute, there are other people richer than me. There are other people smarter than me. There are other people who are greater than me. Shlomo Melech was greater. He was smarter than everybody else. In other words, even if you're on top, even if you have a lot, you can always say to yourself, wait a minute, there's always someone else who's just as big or bigger. I'd just like to end with another explanation from the Sefer Michtav Eliyahu, who explains the passage that we started with, how this particular midah, including envy and tava, remove one from this world. What does it mean to remove one from this world? Even though we said that this means remove one from this world and the world to come, because it destroys our life, it makes our life miserable, he says it in a very nice way. He says, life really is beautiful. There's harmony in creation. There's osher. There can be happiness. When a person pursues kavod, when he has kina and tava, what they eventually do to him is they remove him from this world of harmony and happiness and put him in a world of pain and suffering. In other words, removing from what world? From a world that is really a normal world, a happy world, a world that you can be content, that you can be in peace. People do this to themselves as a result of having these midot. They are removing themselves from a beautiful world and placing themselves in a world of so much suffering, sleepless nights, so much misery because of these midot. So the real tikkun, therefore, will be when one works on himself to get himself out of this cage, of this prison, of the suffering, and back into a life of peace and harmony. And that can happen only through the Torah. And that is the tikkun. That is the tikkun of this midah, when one learns to be able to come back to where he should have been to begin with. A true life of happiness and peace. Working on midot, ladies and gentlemen, is not easy. B'ezrat Hashem, we have a whole year ahead of us. There's many, many midot. It's really, really hard. It's not easy. It could take a lifetime. But I think, as the Gaon of Vilna says, whoever did not even try to work on one midah, he wasted his life. Because it could be because of that one midah that he has, whether it's envy or something else, his life turned out to be so terrible. Had he not been angry, had he not been lazy, had he not been envious, his life would have been different. It would have been a peaceful life. It would have been a happier life. So therefore, I'd like to say it pays to work on our midot. Thank you. Come next